Lincoln understood that there is a vast difference between paying massive amounts of interest to private bankers through privately issued currency and the government issuing interest-free money. He was not alone. There were many still alive that had seen President Jackson defeat the central bank, watched Tyler then also repel it, and saw the assassination of President Garfield, whom had spoken out against them and sought to take even more ground from them. In a speech arguing his support of government-issued greenback money, Lincoln stated, "By the adoption of these principles, the taxpayers will be saved immense sums of interest. The privilege of creating and issuing money is not only the supreme prerogative of government, but it is the government's greatest creative opportunity." In 1863, the Tsar of Russia was having trouble with the European banking cartels. The Tsar was refusing their continual attempts to set up a central bank in Russia. The Tsar then made a bold gesture in support of Lincoln. He issued a decree that if England or France intervened in the American Civil War, he would consider this a declaration of war on Russia and take the side of Lincoln. To support his decree, the Tsar sent a deployment of his fleet to New York and another deployment to port in San Francisco. Whilst the Civil War between North and South was being waged in the fields and forests of America, the war in Washington escalated. The bankers were making moves at reinstating national control of the money system through another central bank. Reinstatement of the central bank would subject the American people again to the prolonged leeching of their wealth through national debt and a growing interest burden. It would also return into bankster hands the power to create nationwide booms and busts. Ultimately, the sabotage of the greenback currency by the passing of various laws pushed by the banking cartels was successful. Still involved in a bitter war, desperately needing currency, and surrounded by politicians sponsored by and subservient to the banksters, Lincoln hesitantly signed the National Banking Act. Nevertheless, he later intended to rescind it. At what point he decided to do so, Lincoln did not make known, but it was known that he later did intend to abolish the central bank, having used it for assistance at a price in his darkest hour. The banking cartels were thrilled at this development. They made a circular which they distributed amongst prominent Wall Street bankers, which outlined their aims and their hopes for the control of the entire financial system. The typical mindset of a bankster is that your potential loss is their potential opportunity. It's just business to them. It can be hard to believe, but the fact of the matter is, they do this as a matter of course. So it shouldn't be surprising when they go to the government for bailouts and when they come to you to repossess your home. This central organisation of banks gave them the ability to work together in concert and speculate on whilst controlling the broader economy. In other words, the fix is in. A similar sentiment was echoed years later, which reveals the ongoing nature of these manipulations. When Lincoln realized that he had unleashed the full power of the bankers upon the American people once again, he became very regretful of his part in the National Banking Act's acceptance into law. Had Lincoln lived, as he himself stated in this quote, he had every intention of repealing the National Banking Act. In addition to that, he stated that the conflict that this would generate would be like nothing the country had ever seen. Lincoln understood what was at stake, and he understood the lengths to which the banking cartels would go to maintain and to strengthen their hold on power. On April 14, 1865, at Ford's Theatre, President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. It was only 41 days after he had been re-elected as president, and just 5 days after the end of the Civil War. One of the great figures of the 19th century was gone, and the banking cartels had removed their greatest threat. One of Lincoln's last public statements leaves us with a chilling expose of an era where Lincoln was seeing his worst fears realized. Lincoln had played his role. He knew that although the war against the Southern Army had been won, the wider war against the financial powers was yet to be won. He understood that although one war was ending, that another was commencing, and that war most certainly did continue beyond his presidency and on into the 20th century, through the 20th century, and into the 21st century, where it now rages today, more important than it ever has been.